And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to, I don't know what iteration this is of the Power Hour podcast, but we've got a few. And it is with great pleasure to introduce Franco to the podcast. Power Pages specialist, contractor, and freelance advocate. Franco, I'm sure you need no introduction, but please feel free to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, so I'm Franco, Power Pages freelancer from the UK. Hopefully I've seen you on the conference circuit, or if not, that I will do in the future. So I focus on Power Pages. I've done contracting in the past. Now I'm more freelance and ad hoc with numerous clients at any one time. About to kick off a restaurant in my spare time. That's something fun to keep us busy. I've got 4 daughters and mostly they've flown the nest now, so it's kind of what do you do with yourself over a weekend or an evening?
Yeah. Start a restaurant, apparently. That's awesome. Okay, right. Tell me a little bit about this restaurant because it's going to bug me throughout the entire podcast. So, why have you started a restaurant? What are you doing? And are you hosting the website on Power Pages?
Good question. No, I'm not. I don't think it's the best use case. So perhaps go into that. What I think is a great use case for Power Pages. But yeah, the restaurant. It's the building's owned by my family. It's a mixed use property and kind of. A lot of us in the family have got a leisure background. So my family's background was in nightclubs, bars, restaurants. So typically when you go into a restaurant, you see things done not quite right and, oh, we're missing this opportunity, should be doing that. This dish would be killer on this menu. Oh, in fact, I'll clarify, not actual killer, not as in lethal, but would be a big hit. Yes, I thought have a go giving it a try, but it's not all Italian, as you might guess, not all Sicilian. It's going to be Mediterranean tapas. So, sorry, something completely thrown us off on a tangent already. But yeah, that's it's always kind of running and reinventing on the spot as I go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And honestly, it's not a tangent because it gives me a good bridge into what was going to be my first question. Franco, you live a life, I feel like, Codecademy and all of these kind of distributors of courses which are trying to transition people into IT are selling, the work from home lifestyle, going on holidays, kind of spending a lot of time off and earning a good kind of salary and income coming in. I guess the first question people are probably eager to hear, and I appreciate you may have answered this in other podcasts, but how did you make it from a full-time job, because I understand you didn't have a traditional kind of software background, into the place you are now? Because I feel like so many people are looking at you and they kind of, respectively want that for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. Actually, apart from working at McDonald's, I've never had a permanent job.
Oh,
So ever since being at high school, I've had some kind of side hustle or business, right from selling confectionery from my school bag, enough to go and buy a mountain bike, to working at my family's nightclubs and bars on the side. I've always had something entrepreneurial, freelance. I had my own little animation studio when my kids were born. I have ran a Coyote bar. I've done probably 90% of jobs that exist out there, or at least that I've heard of. So I've worked in all kinds of different industries. So you're right, I never worked in the software industry before I went contracting. So my way in was as a trainer. And I think that is a fantastic way in, because you're getting to learn the requirements, the pain points, getting used to translating dev talk into user speak, likewise vice versa, picking up business requirements, translating those back. And you really get to see, like I said, what are the pinch points of those particular problems. And I've always found, because I've worked in so many industries, there's something that is a gaping hole and just never been solved in one industry that is just that I've done that a million times over here. Let's just bring that thinking across. And I'm pretty much, I think, bar one, the only person in my giant family that works in IT. But what we all kind of bring to the table, whether that's in property, mechanics, whatever it is creative problem solving. So in fact, even my uncles at work in construction, there'll be like such a problem that's insurmountable, that's going to cost millions of pounds to solve. And it's just, oh, have you thought of this very simple fix?
Yeah.
Like, why did no one else think of that? So yeah, that's kind of my way in, and at least into kind of freelancing and entrepreneurship. And my background was graphics, animation, marketing. So that's kind of what I brought to the nightclubs, but also it got me a seat in a lot of meetings that I wouldn't usually be in. So I think it was quite interesting that when Sean brought that up on his episode, that you kind of buying a seat in these meetings and getting your opinion heard really before it necessarily would be. And yeah, there was always just and here's a creative idea that no one else thought of. That was kind of my niche. I would say that's the unique value that I bring to the Power Pages projects as well, much more than just I can do some coding, but I can take that business outcome that they need and translate that right back to, well, it's this component, it's that list, it's this automation, that notification.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like even though you didn't necessarily traditionally work in software, a lot of those skills were applicable when you were freelancing, when you were kind of pursuing the contract, not the contracting, but the entrepreneurship, as we've discussed. And on that, Franco, because I feel like it gives people a lot of anxiety when it comes to what comes with freelancing and contracting and entrepreneurship. And I feel like it boils down to a couple of things, one of them being sales and the other one being marketing, if we're taking them at the bare bones foundation. So I guess I heard kind of some of your interesting points about sales when you were speaking on other podcasts. Was that anything you did to level up those skills, like practically, or did those just kind of come naturally to you?
Skills, yeah, absolutely. So that was, I'd say, as much as anything, just being very intentional about going down that specialism with Power Pages. And I wouldn't say there's nothing particularly special about Power Pages. It's good for me. It's very much an untapped niche, but yeah, but really go deep as soon as you can. And that was a real benefit of having gone through the contracting world. You know, if I'm working for a Microsoft partner practice where I'm pretty much at the mercy of whatever work comes in and whatever their clients want, I was very picky and intentional about the projects I took on. Because it was kind of that great mix between, I've always had a customer facing job in one way or another, whether that's McDonald's, car sales, working behind the bar, working in insurance, loss adjusting. So I've always had the customer facing element, always kind of wanted to be that that hero for the customer, I guess, in a way, letting their voice be heard and coming up with a resolution to their problems. I always had the pain of, when I was a trainer especially, that my job was to be front of the class Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, which meant life admin completely went out the window, travelling at the weekends. So as soon as I saw this self-service element, it was like, right, customer service meets tech meets some of that graphic design skill that I've got from my old life and bits of WordPress dev that I used to do on the side. So kind of like a perfect storm.
Yeah.
But before that, I kind of thought I would be the Power Automate person. And then it's like, oh, no, there's a lot of awesome content already and the people out there, but there's probably no extra value that I can add, you know, especially with the likes of Paul Morana and John Russell, Damo Bird, countless awesome people in that space. And I'd written what I thought was a fantastic course just as I discovered theirs and John Levesque's content. Like, okay, that's probably defunct now.
Yeah, no, absolute goats of the scene, as you are as well, Franco. I mean, on that, and I have I'm very lucky to be able to speak to a lot of people who are just trying to break into the Power Platform space, and a lot of my content surrounds helping them try and do that. And a big problem they have is they know they need to specialize, but then they tell me all of the specialties are already taken. As you've mentioned, there's a lot of kind of content creators already putting out their stuff. So what advice would you give that person who's saying that all the niches are taken within the Power Platform space?
I'd say it's your spin on it. So say, for example, Power Pages, there was quite a bit of decent content when I got into it. I obviously learned somehow. But all the OGs were really in many ways catering to helping the beginners get on board. So I thought, well, my niche at least can be, I'll stick to the code side and kind of at least from the advanced beginner, intermediate into the more advanced areas. So I made sure I'm not the strongest at creating content. I prefer doing this kind of thing. This gives me energy, whereas writing just absolutely sucks it out of me. So yeah, I found, well, that's my unique take. I'm either going to say, here's a real world business problem, here's the tricky part of it, here's how you work around it with whichever tool, or I would say maybe think about the vertical that you're in. So if there's a lot of, say, Power Automate content, there's a lot of model driven app content, there's a lot of Canvas app content, but you've experienced the real life challenges of doing that in the medical space, in the sports space, doing it for a restaurant, with airlines, whatever it is. But perhaps that's governance for highly regulated environments like financial advice, like insurance. There's so many different ways you can take it. I wouldn't say do content for content's sake, but certainly helping someone out along the way. I know that I've often over-engineered the content. So I may maybe sit on a blog post, but there's stuff in my drafts that I've started writing years ago that's like 80% done. And I know if I'd have just thought, well, I'm going to share the 5 content snippets that are in it, and that's it for now, someone still would have been benefiting from that in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I heard you speak about this in other podcasts as well, but people's role in the community, especially the Power Platform business application space, I was like, a graduate amazed at the groups that people have built. When I went to the Scottish Summit and I saw you speak, it was amazing for me, because I feel like I learned so much being in person, and it's an opportunity we don't get so much anymore. So what would you say to people trying to break out of their shell and trying to do more stuff like this, but having that kind of blocker in their minds to not be able to?
I'd say a lot of the great conferences like Scottish Summit have got the new speakers track. That's something absolutely fantastic to get on. Canadian Summit have done something this year where they're pairing up new speakers with experienced speakers, so that there's some mentoring going on, which I think is a fantastic cause as well. But just get to the conferences. You'll pick up so much in terms of connections, how people got across certain problems. And I think a great point you mentioned there about the groups that are already together at Scottish Summit. It might look from the outside like, oh, no, all of the cliques are already together. Everyone's just, I keep knocking my microphone, everyone's just hanging with their friends already. And the reality is so many of those didn't know each other until, say, the journey up there or 5 minutes before that session. Everyone's just that open. It's an amazing community that we work in. Yeah. There's just as many people we've met for the first time that are high-fiving us in the corridors and on the escalators, or grabbing a coffee with us. But the amount of opportunity that comes up as well, just through organic conversations, is unreal. I'd definitely say get out there and do that.
Yeah, and what advice would you have in terms of networking? So I'm aware that even myself, a lot of people in this space are quite introverted. We all work from home nowadays. Some people don't even leave their house for the week because they genuinely don't need to. You've got home delivery, you can have food ordered for you. There's not really much of a need to even leave your house nowadays. So what advice would you give those people who have made the trip to the Scottish Summit and are now trying to approach people to speak and network? Because I understand you've even landed some clients from some of the events you were in, which has been incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so got clients for years from going to the conferences in UGs, not particularly the goal, but always a nice to have, and even just guesting on other people's YouTube channels as well. That could maybe suit an introvert more, but you're still not necessarily in touching distance to everyone. But what I thought was quite interesting is that I've not got the experience of being an introvert, but it was cool on the Vegas conference. At one of the busiest threads was, "I'm an introvert, want to have breakfast," and that you've got someone for everyone, especially at the bigger conferences. There's all these breakaway groups, and actually you miss so much of what's going on at the conference if you're not in there in the app and sharing your interests. Yeah. Because I'm guessing here, but some of the lack of excitement about mixing is sometimes feeling, I guess, that you've not got something to share, or you've not got value to add, or you've not got relevant experience. Where, like I say, you get conversing about that ahead of time. Before you know it, once you land, there are all these people you've been friendly with online anyway. But getting into like the virtual UG's community high five. Yep. Don't know if you've seen that yet. Got to hit us up, Arden.
Oh, sorry. There you go, Franco. Amazing. I don't want to leave you hanging that.
Community high five with Sarah and Keith. On Sprint Zero with Mike and John. There's so many awesome things out there. Or like this, a lot of the topics that I'll have done in kind of a no pressure situation like this, kind of get used to the messaging and the questions that people want answered. So by the time you go and do it in person, you kind of worked out the messages. You've hit on the points that people want to know. You've got some familiar faces in the audience. That was so awesome with my Keith and Sarah's session at Scottish Summit, that you've got a warm audience. So you kind of realise that, in fact, I'm not being judged here. I'm not on trial like it might feel like otherwise, that I'm either going to succeed or flop, and everyone's hoping that I'm going to flop. They're in the audience rooting for you and wanting to get that value from it. So the better you feel about it, the better the audience feel about it, and the more value everybody gets from it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always like to have like a community segment within these podcasts, because I feel like the value of it can't be overstated. Like, get yourself out there, get heard, let people know your name, and just the best way to do that is provide consistent content which is valuable for people, and people will start shaking your hand at these events, and you'll be able to make a lot of connections and also level up your career as well, which is a lot, what people are after a lot. So I guess...
Sorry, I'd just say, going back to that as well, don't underestimate the long tail of some of that effort you put in as well. So I still get people that I've met from UGs years ago that have finally got a project that fits, finally got the budget, and now want to work together. And when they mention that, that's from like 2018, it's like, really? Yeah, well, we knew it was a fit. We knew we were going to get it. Things are so slow to move in the corporate world, or I've just moved out of a junior role into a hiring position. All of a sudden, things have changed. But likewise, from YouTube videos, from all the conferences, the work you're putting out now, I'm sure there'll still be people discovering this episode in years to come and getting new value from it. So it's well worth doing. It's a good investment in yourself, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I always like to think of, if no one even watches it, I'm going to go back a few years and watch it. Like, I don't know if you can see there's a bookshelf there, but I keep my journals there, and I like to write. And no one sees it. It's for my stuff, but retrospectively, it's always nice to look back. And the same goes for content. It's so easy to have the software, buy yourself a microphone, and just kind of kick it up for someone. So yes, it's a pleasure to have you here, Franco.
Well, I appreciate it, thank you. But likewise, even if all you're sharing is a screenshot of some really valuable settings and posting that on LinkedIn, if you're helping somebody else and even helping yourself in future, there's nothing necessarily that says it has to be customer facing and your voice and you on video. That's only really that for the in-person conferences. Yeah. I'd say even then, try and do a bit of work ahead of time about thinking if you're not got the energy to be meeting everyone everywhere and being in a crowd of thousands of people, at least maybe try and line up a few choice meetings, or see what if you've got a way of reaching out through the app to other introverts or other people that maybe that you've worked with virtually that you want to meet with in the conference halls. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, it's so interesting that you mentioned in the Vegas conference, one of the most popular threads was, "I'm an introvert, let's have breakfast," because I think it just attains to if you're open and honest and genuine and authentic and just yourself, I feel like that people will gravitate towards you always. And people always come to me and ask, I feel like I don't have any unique value to provide. Everyone's already doing everything. And I always say, if you can keep it consistent, you'll find your voice. And myself and yourself, Franco, we've had different experiences. We have probably, similar values, but maybe some slight differences. And that's normal with every human being. So I always say that don't get disheartened by other people doing stuff. Just keep it consistent, and eventually you'll find your voice. So I genuinely do believe it's a numbers game in that regard. I think you need to keep consistent before you find your voice. It's not a case of finding your voice and then you do the consistency. It goes the other way, and I feel like that gets misinterpreted somehow, and then people never start, which is a real shame, honestly.
Yeah, because this is bad for me to say, someone who can't get my words out, but you train yourself into articulating your point, don't you? You kind of refine it as you go, the more you discuss it, and especially as you get questions in the comments, it'll build the quality of what you're going to say, or it might provide some supporting points, or equally, here's a few conflicting opinions, because there are so many different ways to approach these things. Yeah.
And yeah, honestly, like even something with one of my posts, I had a lot of controversy around one of my MVP posts. I posted an MVP roadmap, and MVPs got annoyed about it. They said, that's not the point. In my experience, I find people come to me and they have that goal in mind. And that's okay, in my opinion. I think if you have that goal in mind, it doesn't make you different from anyone else who doesn't have that goal in mind. I think it's a good motivator. But I think to obtain that, you have to provide consistent and valuable content. And that is the only predecessor to it. So it helped me think constructively about it. And, you know, was definitely a humbling lesson for me. It was my first kind of controversial post, I'd say. So I'd say don't be afraid of controversy as well, because, you know, the controversial comment, so to speak, got maybe 30 likes, 40 likes, but the post got 250 likes. So you don't know who you're helping in comparison.
But it says something about the types of content as well, though, that it doesn't always have to be an in-depth technical guide, something like that,
Exactly.
like a roadmap, decision trees. There's so many things that can add value. So just for example, with me, it could be, here are 8 really common use cases for Power Pages and why I think they're a good fit, or how do you choose between an out-of-the-box component versus low-code versus pro-code, or something like React. I don't necessarily have to have the skills in any of those areas. You know, it could be very much from an architecture point of view, but what's the thought process? There's so much value in that as well.
Oh, yeah.
But say, again, from that unique value, going back to something like a conference, that unique value might just be, you know, if you're a bit tired and not with it one morning, someone giving you the high five, the hug in the corridor, the big smile, someone recognising you and saying hello by name. It might send someone's day on a totally different trajectory. I know it has for me. For me, when I was getting into the Pages space, Cheryl Netley was emceeing on whatever virtual event it was, and she did such a good job of just making everyone feel welcome, doing a few name drops for the new people like me, because obviously we're all new to it at some point. Mm-hmm. And yes, she kind of got me hooked on the whole community thing in the first place, and then getting to see her in person for the first time was awesome. And it was quite ironic because she was saying, "Oh, I'm kind of humbled by all the pro stuff that you do, Franco." This was at Scottish Summit 2022, and then she got up to deliver the best introduction to Power Pages I've ever seen, and she come away like a bit insecure and uncertain as to how it's gone. Like, no, you just absolutely laid it out perfectly.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you know, we're speaking about ways to provide value back to the community. We had a quick discussion before this podcast about something that you're doing, and I'd love to hear more about it. So people are absolutely dying to learn from you, Franco, honestly, including myself. Like, you have so much experience, so much knowledge, technical skills, and even softer skills. And we'll kind of get into those softer skills later in the podcast as well. But do you want to tell the audience kind of what you have going on in that regard with giving your knowledge back and the training that you're planning?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got an online course that's been brewing for quite some time. I've got a group coaching package. But the thing that's happening soonest is, you've probably heard that I take a big chunk of the year off. Last year took 5 months off, and what I've been trying to work on is what's a way that I can scale up. So one, from, let's say, I've got some enterprise government level projects coming on that they need more than just me, or there's such a capacity where I'm having to turn down projects, which is quite often the case. So I've partnered up with Synapse in the UK, a partner that I'm really good friends with people there, with Charlie, with Matt, Sophia, Andy, and I thought, well, this in-depth intensive training doesn't exist, and it would really annoy me if I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention certain training providers, but your big corporate training providers doing a horrible job of, you know, misunderstanding the value proposition of Power Pages, of, you know, going through useless exercise at kind of producing brochureware, corporate websites, that kind of thing. So I've designed this course around, we're building 3 projects based on real world stuff that I've worked on, that we're all working on the same code base, that we're attacking common customizations that I've asked for, that we're going over everything from, here are some sample requirements, here's how we break them down, here's how we turn that into a build list, and how do we get the best of the platform. So I'm going at it from time to value. How do we get to that MVP? How do we kind of split that into no code, low code, pro code, and maybe leverage Copilot along the way as well? But again, all on real world examples and all project driven. So it's going to be the same projects that we covered in the online course, but with Synapse, I'm delivering that in London on a 5-day intensive. So it would be from zero right through to hero. And I've seen people that paid for our workshop in Vegas that really, this is an example of how scarce the good quality training is on Power Pages, but paid thousands to attend the workshop just to be able to ask one pretty simple question that they've been struggling with for the last 6 months. So yeah, it's tackling that kind of thing. But also part of why I'm doing that and part of why Synapse are interested in that is I see a real growth area taking existing Canvas app makers and model-driven app makers into the Power Pages world. So that there's so much more that we can do with the UI and the UX. And we're thinking about this from the point of view of every one of us in our own way are developing web applications. We're all using Dataverse as the back end, but we're kind of limiting ourselves into, right, this is only for internal users. This is only for the back end staff. And it's usually staff that are indirectly helping out customers. The software is indirectly helping customers.
Right.
If we can free up that capacity, which is a goal for everybody, all organisations free up capacity costs, but we let the customers push that along themselves, provide us some structured data, come up with a way that we can assign them tasks, that we can let them self-serve with different roles. Probably seen a lot of it through COVID and lockdown. All of a sudden, self-service and portals, it was our minimum expectation. That hasn't gone away. So for me, all those valuable skills that the Canvas app makers have got an appreciation for a lot of the same things that we would on Power Pages. Part of the course is going to be how do you transition, how do you take all those existing skills, that existing terminology, and turn that into Power Pages instead. And you'll see you've got so much more capability for responsive, for UI, for custom UX, and surprising and delighting customers, which that's what I'm in it for anyway.
Yeah, man, that gets me so excited.
You've probably seen I go off on a tangent pretty easily, but
no, not at all, not at all. This is awesome. Honestly, it's what I was looking for. And do you have any dates in mind? So you mentioned two things there, the live training and the online course. Do you have any dates in mind, pricing structures? Has that been determined, or is that to be determined?
I'll drop a link before we finish up. So one's going to be for the online course in London. That I think is 3,850 plus VAT. That's for the 5 days in London. Yeah. And the online course is going to be kind of charter members 599, and that's going to be just an on-demand course. The idea was originally the first cohort would be live, but I just found with taking all the time off, it'd be better to batch all the content and let users go serve themselves. We'll have little bits of office hours and stuff as people progress. But also another thing that came to light, I had a bit of a trial of that course in December and trying to get it to work for people in Australia, in the US, UK, and people coming on from Singapore. How do you make that work? So on demand seems to be the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely love it, and yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on my LinkedIn feed for that announcement, Franco. That's awesome. Cool. So a lot of the gold of what you do is within the technical stuff, as you've discussed on other podcasts. But something that was really appealing to me was kind of your softer skills. So, for example, kind of pricing structures and how you manage that. So are you someone that does something by the project, or do you work by the day, or do you work by the hour?
I would prefer to do it by the value of the project, value-based pricing. Realistically, the way it tends to go is, especially people that are more used to more traditional IT projects, everything's about a day rate in their mind. Occasionally, with some of my US clients, they will discuss an hourly rate. Usually, what I would tend to do for that is not just take my day rate and divide it by 8, because there's so much lead time, lag time, the mental switch between projects, the run over answering questions, those kind of things. So I typically say, right, if you want just an hour of the time, that's say a quarter of a day, so more like 2.5 hours equivalent. But yeah, it will usually be, right, ballpark, for this spec that you've got, this is the number of days I assume, and pretty much my experience means that works out every time anyway.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you mentioned earlier about the sales and marketing. I find I don't have to do any sales whatsoever. And the marketing is very much the community content, being positioned as an expert on LinkedIn. And that's kind of made me magnetic, probably because it's a relatively small space for now, and because I'm based in the UK. So certainly for UK clients, that's so appealing for things like data sovereignty, making sure that they're not having to worry about data leaking across borders and ending up being sold abroad and that kind of thing. And then for the US clients, there's a bit of a saving there. And I've seen, again, it might be a bit controversial, but I've seen that there's a tendency to outsource a lot of innovation from the US over into the UK and Europe. Don't know if that's because people are so busy on big, long-running projects, or there is something unique about the talent in the UK and Europe.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you've got that that body of work, you've got the portfolio, you've got example projects. All of a sudden, all these things tend to tie in together. I mentioned it on other sessions, but the longer you're at it, the easier it becomes, because there's more word of mouth, there's more repeat business. That's absolutely my favourite kind of work to be on. And especially where we've trained the clients where only if you've got a novel requirement do you bother coming to me. If you want the same as I did last time, I've done knowledge transfer with the internal staff. I've skilled up everyone that wants to know. So it's really enabled them, and then something new, shiny, exciting comes along. That's when you grab me in. And I've kind of trained the customers as well that having me in meetings or working synchronously isn't what I want to do, and neither is it really good value for them. Because as a contractor, what I find, we've got the expert, we're going to bring him into every single meeting, whether it's relevant or not. Kind of like we're going to make sure we get our money's worth, even if there's one question out of 3 hours that they needed me for. The rest is kind of dead time and downtime.
Yeah. And that actually raises another question I had. So you're not a contractor, you are a freelancer.
Correct, yeah.
Could you explain to people listening who don't know just the difference between that and kind of the key differences between those two kind of fields?
I will, and I'll explain it like it's kind of hard and fast definitions and very distinct things. But contracting for me was still very much Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That was the kind of engagement. So it was almost like being on, I'm trying to think what the other, a fixed term contract, but for an inflated rate, because you're coming in with some urgency and some expertise that either doesn't exist in-house, or in-house they don't have the capacity to take on projects, just BAU. So that's very much how it was as a contractor. The benefit of contracting for me, besides the rate at the time, was I'd get to focus on what I wanted to focus on. So I started in with training, then I'd specifically get into dynamics training, because it was just general IT stuff to start with. Then from there, like I said, kind of saw the customers' pain points, getting used to liaising with the development team, coming up with my own app ideas. Often they'd be poo-pooed. I'd be get the sense I'm being lied to, that kind of just patronise when they're saying things aren't possible. What you're asking for is a silly idea. The customers don't know what they want. Blah blah blah. To well, what if I build a proof of concept? As we can kind of prove out. I'll do the legwork at the start, chip off the rough edges with the customers, and then you build it. So that was kind of the way in. And I had some of that experience. I'd then say tailor my CV a bit to say trainer and functional consultant. Mm-hmm. And then as I took on more and more projects, it'd be right, I've done everything in the finance space, done everything in the insurance space, got a good spread of customers across charity, leisure and other areas. That's when I started to think of myself as more like a senior functional consultant. But it all felt very much tied to the corporate world, which isn't necessarily me. So it seemed like the next steps was only going to be, right, if you want to go from functional consultant, you want to go up the ladder, it's either going to be project manager or solution architect. Tried both of those. Project management definitely is not for me. And solution architecture, at least on the projects I've been on in the UK, was very much about attending meetings, putting PowerPoint decks together, doing architecture diagrams, rather than actually getting hands-on building. So one of the reasons I got into freelancing was going up that pay scale, but without having to get into seniority, management, spending all my time in meetings, wanting to still feel as creative as I always have done. And the other was kind of naturally built up where at the end of every contract, customers were asking me, how do we stay engaged with it? We want to keep it ongoing. We can't do Monday to Friday 9 to 5. It does for forever, and it doesn't necessarily work that we're going to commit to X days per month forever. So that kind of got the conversations going. After so much repeat business, once I had maybe 10 to 20 clients looking to continue working with me, that's where I was like, right, I'm going to go freelance. It wasn't. It wasn't carefully planned, let's say, but it got to the point where I'm doing so many bits of this on the side stuff, keeping these relationships going, that it just made sense to not go and look for the next contract. But also to the end of that contracting period, that's where I started doing my first portal projects, and I could really see, well, that this is an untapped market. And like I said, not having to do any sales, it was very much even when I was in the contracting side, there's the bits you've got to do to kind of sell yourself and why take on you versus another candidate. As soon as I had my projects that I built in public, like the Spotify clone, I'd so often get customers that'd say, right, but the dynamics bit is a given, but we've got a market full of people that know how to do dynamics and knows how to do the Power Automate integration aspects of the projects, etc. But we want someone that's got some UI, UX appreciation, someone that can make something that doesn't look like Microsoft's examples. So having that that passion project that I built in my own time, wouldn't be so many projects just like, well, it's just that's your one obstacle, your one blocker gone. So
Yeah.
Are we doing this? And usually it was yes.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
But also found, sorry, another,
please.
not necessarily a tangent, but another thing related to that springs to mind is so often I see contractors back in the day were bench warmers. So it's like we need someone on hand just in case we need you that particular day, and just kind of look busy in the meantime. But that's not the mandate to look busy, but you're kind of killing time, sat on your hands, and you're there just in case. Whereas as a freelancer, you'd be like, I'm totally fine to put down that project, not charge you in the meantime, because I've got 2 to 3 clients over here that are looking for the skill, that are busy and ready. And it just kind of finds a nice natural balance most of the time.
Yeah, interesting. And would you recommend that someone, let's say they're in full-time work, would you recommend that they become a contractor before they move into freelance, or would you recommend that they jump directly into freelance? Let's say the goal for that person is freelance. They want that life. Would you recommend they take that first step to contracting, or go directly to freelance if they know that's what they want?
I'd say if they've got the demand already, then go ahead, absolutely get on with freelancing. But I think more realistically, yeah, you're going from where your full-time employer is the one that's going out winning the work, to you having to fill that pipeline. So yeah, for me, I see permanent to contracting being the first transition. That'll get you used to the commercial conversations, managing a company, not having a team to lean on as well. That's a new thing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then once you've got that base of customers looking to do business with you, then perfect. That's the time to make the leap over to freelancing. Doesn't have to be that way, but that's worked for me. And yeah, if you can take that stress away from things, that, like I say, you're not thinking about, I'll start Monday with tumbleweed, no customers, no projects.
Yeah.
What do I do now? How do I pay the bills for the next few months?
Yeah, it's a scary thought for people, isn't it? I think even that jump between full-time to contracting scares some people. Even though you're signing a contract, it's like, what if there's no work, and how am I going to approach it? All right, awesome. And people would be wise, including myself, to listen to you. I know it might be difficult, but if you had to give a launch pad for someone, let's say 6 months, 7 months down the line, they want to move into contracting, what are some of the things that you say you got to do? You got to start doing if you want to do it in 6 months or 7 months?
Yeah, I'd be thinking, great question, first of all, but I'd be thinking, have something visual. So whether you're from anything from governance, ALM, right through to Canvas apps, model-driven apps, Power Pages, whatever your specialty is, have something to show. So if it's you versus 9 other candidates and every other person has said, well, can't show you anything, it's behind NDA, can't show you anything, it's password protected. You just showing that, well, I've taken the time to repurpose something in my own environment, in my own time. No excuses, here is the thing. Even if it's kind of a cut down version of it, enough to demonstrate that value and that skill. I'd say absolutely invest some time in writing some case studies. So the projects you've done in the past, what were the unique challenges? What's the novel tech that you've used? What is what's the headlines of what you've done? What's a business transformation? I see so many weak CVs and LinkedIn profiles, and I think it's understandable because if you've been in a permanent job for so long, you're not having to attract anybody, and maybe your previous role was nothing to do with, not necessarily IT, maybe even not even Power Platform. But yeah, work on making yourself known. Don't wait until you're in the market to start producing content. I know I'm repeating some of what Parvez said here, but it did drop some proper value bombs in his episode. But yeah, don't wait until you're looking for work to start sharing with the community. Go and set yourself out there, put the content out there, share your top tips, and make as many of those connections as you can. And what I found a lot recently is it was either people that were interested in contracting, were interested in freelancing, wanted to move away from the permanent world. Now with all the layoffs in the last couple of years, I think that myth of job security in a permanent role's kind of gone away quite a bit, or people are at least a little twitchy where they want some kind of career insurance, so to speak, that if I was to lose my role next year, what happens? Am I just going to be searching the market for a permanent role and applying against my 20,000 colleagues that are also laid off? Or am I going to have a network of ready people? Is my name going to be already out there? Have I got some demonstrable value already? And maybe doing bits of side gig work if your contract allows as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can speak for myself, but also the people around me. And I'm 22. My generation and the people that were in my year, I hadn't spoken to a single person, no matter what they wanted to do, that wanted to stay in full-time employment for the rest of their lives. I haven't had that conversation. The world has truly shifted its perspective, and it's becoming more and more apparent. More and more people are making content, and it's just, I think we just have to accept the reality. I guess on that, Franco, and, we're approaching around 40 minutes, so we'll begin to wrap up. But in terms of your perspective on life, and I know it's a very broad question, but your perspective on what you do with your kind of free time, your work-life balance. Like you said, you took 5 months off. You're opening a restaurant. You have a very different lifestyle to some people, as I'm sure you recognize. So what's your perspective to that? And what would you say to people who are scared to make that first jump into contracting, who've been wanting to do it for a long time? Because it seems like you're kind of someone who has an idea, who writes it down a little bit, thinks about it, and is like, I'm just going to try. And if it doesn't work out, and tell me if I'm wrong, but this is the vibe I'm getting for you. If it doesn't work out, then screw it. So what's your kind of perspective on life on that? And what advice would you give to people who are looking to make those jumps?
Yeah, great question. So I think, first of all, I come from an immigrant background, from people that couldn't rely on academics and getting a conventional job, not been through the English school system, which is quite a blocker. A lot of them struggle with writing, so that it was totally normal for me, first of all, not to end up in a permanent role. So even though I did school, sixth form and some university, I was already, like I said, doing my side hustles. I was already earning more than my teachers in sixth form. When we were doing IT projects, it would always be something that is either I've been paid for already, or I'm selling to somebody, or that has got real world application for the family's business. So kind of this idea of delivering business value or creating value out of something that wasn't originally valuable, combining components or whatever, that was already there. So I think it was a given I was going to be in business or somewhere in some way or another. And then in terms of the lifestyle, I've kind of had this example my dad set. So he did really well in business in the bars and nightclub space, but he was always wound up, always stressed until we got our magical time in Sicily where everyone's just like decompress, slow down the way of life, laughing, joking, and spending all the time al fresco. So I kind of decided as soon as I could, that is what I want as much as my year to be. Contracting didn't lend itself too well to that. As I say, it was very much Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So the income was great, but it wasn't giving that lifestyle or the freedom or the flexibility. So yeah, I just tried, as soon as I started with Freelancer, I'm going to draw these lines so I don't work summer. It's as simple as that. So if you want to engage with me, it's these times of year, or we can maybe do light touch stuff at the odd meeting from the beach or whatever. And you soon find when you've treated everybody so well in every other way in business that actually they'll accommodate those kind of things. And with contracting as well, it'd almost be kind of an unwritten requirement, but right, cool, we're happy with you for the role, interviewed well, but for this 9 months you're not going to take any time off, have you? Can we just double check you've not got any holidays booked? So you kind of, a lot of the time, be talked out of it before the thoughts even entered your head, whereas now it's like, this is definitely happening, definitely going to these conferences, and the kind of the balance to that, the upside to the customer is, like I said, where there's a long approval process, waiting around for decisions, waiting around for stakeholders to be available. I'll happily just let you rest, charge you nothing, and be busy on other projects. And one final thing, that I would say about contracting, Sarah Jones and I discussed this offline, but I think a really interesting point that we'll cover in one of our future sessions is how the timing throughout the year affects contracting as well. So I always found if you're not in work, say early December, you're going to have a barren period because the decision makers are going to be away. December soon ends up being January. January things are slow to pick back up, and then once people are in, more often than not, they say, well, we're just waiting on the April budget. So it can really affect demand, just what time of year you become available. Then when you come into, like I do a lot of work around Europe as well, if you're trying to be busy, say in August, but all of Norway's off, all of Italy's off, and whoever else does that, it gets so hard to get hold of the decision makers that your onboarding process can be so long, and in fact you're losing money throughout that time. So ideally, yeah, I'd say to a lot of contractors, whatever work you can get in, say December and January, take it. If you've got a chance of an extension in your current role and it's coming up to summer and you're not sure what's out there in the market, take that extension, because you're not going to be sat waiting around for the CEO, the decision maker, the IT manager to come back off holiday or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
April seems to be a great time, in fact. If I came onto the market in April, it'd be great. Which of the tens of projects do I want, rather than thinking, right, one's going to come along at some point.
And does it really go completely dead in terms of work coming for contractors?
Relatively, yeah.
Wow.
And it's not necessarily that the demand isn't there, that the job roles aren't being shared and there's nothing on the forums. It's just when it comes to, right, we just need a hiring decision. That's the bit that seems to take ages, or the person that would be onboarding you is on holiday for the next 6 weeks. So there's another delay incurred.
Yeah. And Franco, you have a lot of demand. How do you manage it all? How do you manage all these clients? How do you manage your time? I'm so interested in kind of your philosophy on that.
Well, first of all, I do say no to a lot of projects. The easiest ones to say no to are the bad fit projects, where I don't think they should be using Power Pages anyway. The others would be where I kind of got the sense that, I know this is a luxurious position to be in, it wasn't like this from day one, but also the ones that seems going to be absolutely red tape, start to finish, wanting me in meetings, working synchronously the whole time, and that's the only way they do it, or they've said their invoice terms are something really independent, unfriendly, like 90 days, or sometimes it's even been, I've sent an email about an invoice and I got an automated message back from Accenture to say, we'll call you back, we'll message you back in 6 to 8 business days. And I'm all right, that's a red flag. That's not happening. So yeah, that's part of it. So controlling which customers I would want to work with, and then the other is, besides saying no, is which projects excite me. So I guess if I was the best business person, what I'd be doing is saying just do loads of cookie cutter projects. What can I just stamp in project to project, barely do any work, just reissue the same code essentially. I wish I could be interested and excited by that, but that's kind of not how the brain works. So usually is there a novel twist on this? Is there something that something unique to tackle, or is there something that I feel that only my expertise is going to be a good fit for? Like I said, that's now that I'm in the privileged position that I've got tens of projects coming in throughout the year from across the world. At the start, it was very much just like, who's going to entertain a freelancer? There's my ideal client.
Yeah, and you've worked your arse off to get there, so I'm so happy for you, and hopefully, continued success for you, Franco, as per usual. At the end of these podcasts, I always like to lay out the red carpet, let the people know what you have going on. All of your links, of course, will be in the description, but, we mentioned the online training, the online course. Is there anything else you have going on, Franco?
No, that's it now, apart from I've got big ideas on the personal side for 2025, happily in a relationship, and want to see as much of that world as possible.
Love it, and best of luck in your relationship as well, Franco. Thank you so much for your time today.
Appreciate it, mate. Awesome speaking to you. All the best.
No, a pleasure as always. Take it easy.
Catch you soon.